Hi, Jeff Atchison, Chief Business Development Officer here at IFP. Welcome to another episode of How to Grow. And again, what we're trying to grow is your presence, your practice, and your profits. Today, what we're really going to talk about is goals and objectives. And as we've talked in other episodes, from the IFP Business Solutions mindset, how do I get in front of and get a relationship going with business owners who are multidisciplinary in their needs? But how do we uncover that? The title of this episode was Prescription Before Diagnosis is Malpractice. And you're saying, well, where does that come from? Well, I know all of you have had those where the wholesaler calls your office and say, hey, I'd like to get to know a little bit more about you and your practice. And you have a cringe and you're like, okay, that's just time. That's me talking about stuff that I don't really care to talk about. And frankly, it's just not a very effective door opener. On the other hand, I'll tell you a story. Several years ago, I went with a younger advisor for an appointment they'd set up with a doctor acquaintance of theirs. And we got to the first meeting, and again, the doctor was in surgery, and granted, that's important work. I'm not gonna get a little too upset when they're late, when they're really late. And then they ultimately, nurse comes in, doctor canceled the appointment, would like to meet again the next day, but at a different hospital. So we go to the next hospital, late again, comes in and says, hey, sorry, I promised you an hour. I got a little tied up on some things. I got to be scrubbing up for surgery. In 20 minutes, what are you trying to sell me? So at that point, I said, well, we're really not trying to sell you anything. He said, well, everybody that comes in here is trying to sell me something. I said, well, that's your fault, not our fault. And he said, well, what does that mean? I said, well, you said an hour. Now you gave us 20 minutes. We got to make a living too. We got to try and find something you might want to buy. I said, but that's not how today is going to go. Today we're going to talk about real quick in 5 or 10 minutes, what are your goals and objectives? If I can't help you, we're out of here. You'll never see me again. You guys are friends and you can continue to be acquaintances from that point in time. If you find something I can help you with, then we'll set another meeting up and we'll talk about that. So at that point he says, well, how are we going to do that? I said, I have 2 things I need you to do. I said, I'm going to give you this yellow highlighter. And then if you look at your screen that pops up now, I handed him a piece that says, what are your goals and objectives? I said, so if you'll look at that and you'll take this yellow highlighter, take however much time you need, but I think it won't take you more than 5 minutes. I frankly have to use the restroom, so I'll be right back. As a sidebar, I do that on purpose because no one wants to be trying to do their homework with someone staring at them. So I used it as an excuse to go out to the bathroom, even though I didn't even have to use the bathroom. Gave him the time, the space, came back in, and as expected, he had gone down through this piece, taken this yellow highlighter, and it highlighted 5 different things on this particular goals and objectives. And I turned it around and he said, you can help me with those things? I said, if you give me sufficient time and you can afford to address the issues. He goes, I'm making a couple $1 million a year. I can afford to address the issues. I said, okay, which one do you want to focus on first? I said, we can't talk about all 5 at the same time. Tell me which one's the most important. We'll set another appointment and we will get together from there. So we actually then prioritized the 5 things that were of importance to this particular individual from there. There's actually cognitive theory built into this because if you do work with older clients in particular, they will tell you never put someone in a position of basically memory recall. Always have people in a position of memory recognition. Because if I said to you, what's your top favorite rock bands of the 1980s? You might get through the first one and the second one, then you start stammering around a little bit because we started losing memory recall at 18 years old from there. But if I gave you a list of 20 rock bands in the 1980s and said which one of these are your top 5, you could take this yellow highlighter and you'd zip right through that. So as a result of that, always put people in a position of recognition, not recall. It's less stressful, it's a much more enjoyable experience, it's a much more engaging. It's the same thing when you take a test. If you've got to recall the answer, it's harder to do. As a point though, if you're working with older clients and they cannot address memory recognition, that's not a good sign. That is an early sign of certain mental deficiencies starting to come into play from there. So if you see someone struggling with recognition, that we now at that point have cognitive issues that don't bode well for the future going forward. And I tell myself that all the time just to reassure myself when I can't remember something. Anyway, so when you get all done, the second thing, so well, why do you order the 5 once you identify the 5? It's a little bit like playing pool. You know, I've got a pool table down in my man cave, but I am the worst pool player in the history of the world. I just cannot play the game from there. But if I'm playing the best pool player in the world, we both have one thing in common. If you don't make the first shot, you don't get the second shot, you don't get the third shot. So in these, you're looking for what is your easiest shot to sink the ball so you get another shot. In other words, don't work on 5 until you take care of 1. You build momentum. You fix number 1 priority. Let's say, oh, that was good, that was easy, let's work on 2. So build some momentum. The difference also between the best pool player in the world and the worst, me, is the best pool player will walk up to the table and they'll see all their shots culminating in the 8 ball in the corner pocket, whatever the case may be. So while you may look at those 5 priorities and know exactly where you think you want to go with those, in this particular case, don't overwhelm your prospective client at this point. Find the easiest shot, sink that, focus on what their pain point is, and then move on from this standpoint. So coming back to the very beginning, the easy, non-threatening way that's truth, because we all have those calls, hey, can I have 5 minutes of your time? And you know they're going to be there an hour. This is truly saying to someone, hey, if I could have 5 minutes of your time, I'd just like to talk about your goals and objectives. If we don't find there's anything I can help you with in less than 5 minutes, we're done. We'll have lunch, we'll talk about sports, or at least when we used to have sports. We'll talk about grandkids, we'll do whatever, we'll leave you alone. Because here's my point. When you look at these questions, and we're going to touch on them here in a little bit, if they don't have something on there that's of interest to them or a pain point, what are they really telling you? Because no one is in perfect financial shape. They are telling you they don't like you. Go away. You're not going to do any business with them. There's no traction here at this point. Have a nice lunch. Go find someone who likes you. Because the point being, it's pretty hard once you see the questions and go through them, they're on your screen, that someone says, nope, got every single thing on here covered. If that's the point, don't be a hard charging salesman. Chalk it up to it didn't mesh. You remind them of their sister's ex-husband or something. Something in there, you're just not clicking from that point. So we broke it down in the goals and objectives into 4 key areas that would affect any small business person or even person of means. But in the financial planning area, wealth management, business planning, worksite solutions. And again, for time, I'm not going to go through each individual question. We are in future episodes of How to Grow. We're going to be drilling down on these questions and elaborate on what is the solution. Just rest assured at this point in time, when it comes to the IFP platform of, again, partners, products, and services, there is not a question on this goals and objective sheet that we can't help a client or a prospective client address or to deal with. So again, how do I go out and how do I get in front of people in a very non-threatening, unassuming, short and sweet way with high activity, because high activity always leads to productivity. Use the IFP Goals and Objectives piece. And again, if you want to get a copy of that, reach out to me, jeff.atchison@ifpartners.com, our Director of Business Solutions, Matt Levanchi, at ifpartners.com, and we can get this in your hands and help you again get back to how to grow your presence, your practice, and your profits using some of the tools and resources here at IFP.